So, hi everyone, we might need to wait a few seconds for others to join us, but whilst they do that, please do start adding your questions about financial benefits for family carers to the chat. We've already had a number of questions that have been sent to us, so we're going to address those first. If we don't have time to answer all of the questions today, we'll either respond in the chat after the session. There's about 15 minutes after the session ends where we have a chance to do that, or we'll get in touch via direct message. So please don't worry, your questions will be answered. Okay, I think we're good to go now. So hello and welcome to everybody. We're looking forward to spending some time with you this lunchtime. This session is, of course, for anyone who wants to join, but it's very much focused on those of us who are unpaid carers looking after somebody with dementia. Our topic for discussion today will be focused on finance and benefits, issues you might have around the rising cost of living, carers assessments and the power of attorney. But of course, you may have other issues you want to raise, so please do feel free to raise them in the chat. It's your session, so we want to make it as useful to you as possible. Just to introduce myself, I'm Helen. I'm the Head of Policy and Campaigning here at Dementia Carers Count. Some of you may already know Jane, but I'll let her introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Jane Stanfield. I'm an Associate Practitioner with Dementia Carers Count. And previously I spent 20 years in carer support in information and advice and carers assessments.
Great. And before we start with our Q&A, I just have some important housekeeping. So just to be clear that whilst Jane is an expert, of course, in her field, she's not a financial advisor and can't offer financial or legal advice. So her answers will be very much more about sharing general information that should help you. If you have a specific situation that you need advice on, we suggest consulting an independent financial or legal advisor to support you in that specific example. Also to say the event is being recorded and will be uploaded to our Facebook and YouTube channels, so you can access it afterwards or share it for anyone who might be interested. If we don't get around to answering your question today and you'd like to contact Jane directly, please send an email to support@dementiacarers.org.uk. That address will be in the comments bar, and all the details that I'll be saying I will go back over at the end of this session, so you shouldn't lose it. Okay, let's get started. So going to some of the questions we've already had. Jane, we know a lot about the cost of living crisis now. We're hearing an awful lot, and we know it's impacting many, many carers. Do you have any advice or information for carers who are struggling about how they might get some support for the increasing cost of food and fuel?
Yeah. Well, the advice is the same for everybody, family carers or everyone, because it's all to do with doing your best to check that you're claiming everything you're entitled to. There may be some non-means tested benefits that you're entitled to. For example, the disability benefits for the person you're caring for, it's not means tested. Think about carers allowance, reductions in council tax, and then the means tested benefits as well, universal credit and pension credit if that applies. There's also this thing called energy company obligation, ECO, which might help with insulating your home to reduce your bills. There's the Energy Supplier Priority Service Register, which if you qualify would perhaps give you emergency credit if you've got a prepayment meter or payment plans, and you may be able to access grants through that as well. So that's the Energy Supplier Priority Services Register, and you check with your own energy supplier. There are benefit calculators online if you want to look at what you might qualify for. There's Turn to Us, that's Turn, and then figure 2, Us, that has a benefits calculator. MoneySavingExpert.com, Martin Lewis's website, has a 10-minute benefits check. And there are others as well, or you might want to go to your local Citizens Advice or other advice agency. There's the winter fuel payments that for some people become automatically because they qualify, because they get the relevant benefit. There's the £400 that we're all going to get off our household bills. There's the universal things that are available for everybody there. And then for food, there's there's the local community pantries and the food banks. Not brilliant, but if it's relevant for you, there will be one local to you, I'm sure.
Yeah. Another carer has been in touch about power of attorney, asking why it's so difficult to get a power of attorney after the parent has gone into a care home. And in their specific example, what they're saying is that the house needs to be sold to afford the care, which is obviously quite a common situation, but it just feels like to them a sea of bureaucracy. They're asking, when should they have done this? Do you have any advice for them about their situation now? And is there an optimum time to be looking at power of attorney arrangements?
Well, looking at lasting powers of attorney, the optimum time is now for all of us. The sooner the better, really, because if you leave it until the person no longer has the mental capacity to understand what they're doing, they don't understand the legal implications of it, then unfortunately it's too late and you can't make one. It doesn't necessarily mean that if someone's moved into a care home that they haven't got the mental capacity to make a power of attorney, but that will need to be assessed, and someone needs to certify that they do understand and they do have mental capacity. So it doesn't, you know, you've got to go through those hoops. If the person doesn't have mental capacity, then unfortunately you don't have the option of a power of attorney, but you could apply to the Court of Protection for a deputyship order or a single order for the sale of the property. It's very awkward trying to sell a property to someone else if you don't have power of attorney. So yeah, your only option would be the Court of Protection and those procedures to give you the authority to sell a property on behalf of somebody else. But it is difficult, and I'm sorry that that's the situation you're in at the moment.
Okay, yeah, thank you. And moving on to another query we've had, which is a carer who's had an assessment and been assigned a social worker. They're not happy with the support they've received from the council so far, but they do have an excellent care company, and they're really happy with that company. But what they're telling us is because of the poor rate paid by the council to the care company no longer take contracts from the council. So they're left with the option of either self-funding that care or accepting something they're not going to be quite as happy with. What they've decided to do actually is to self-fund, but what they're saying is the only way they can do it is by cutting back to the bare minimum of hours of care that they receive. But also, as we've talked about with the cost of living crisis, they're very concerned about, with inflation being what it is, that they can really only manage this till the winter, and then they're worried about what happens next. So is there anything they can do? And, you know, do you have any suggestions for them?
And I can see that is a big worry. I'm hoping that you're not thinking of self-funding the whole lot, but rather topping up as a self-funder, because someone can get instead of getting the council to arrange the care for you and paying their agency, you can get direct payments, the amount of money they would have spent, and then you can choose how to spend it, and a third party, like another family member, can top it up for you, so that it might only be the top up that is having to be self-funded rather than the whole lot. I don't know from your question whether that is the case already or not. It's quite difficult it's complicated. If you get direct payments, you have to administer them and keep records, and someone can help you with that, a family member, or there are agencies as well that would support you with your direct payments. So just on the face of your question, I would hope that you can get what the council would have paid to the agency and then get it topped up to pay the agency of your choice. The only other thing I might suggest at this stage is looking very carefully at the person's assessed needs, and if there are good reasons why the agency that the council want to use can't meet those needs and the agency that you want to use can, you have to be very specific. And I'm not saying that there's a huge chance of success with that argument, but if there are very real differences in the agencies and the council's agency won't meet her assessed needs, have a look at the assessment and see. But otherwise, I think you're looking at getting the direct payments and topping up. So you ask the council about that.
Great, thank you. That's useful. I hope that helps. So another question about sort of providing the care for someone with dementia. We've got a query about someone who's reduced their working hours to look after their mother-in-law. She's in the mid stage of vascular dementia. What they're looking to do is leave work in July and be the full-time carer. But what their situation is that they don't currently want carers coming into the house. The mother-in-law isn't comfortable with strangers coming in and doing that. So what they're looking at doing is this person becoming the full-time carer, but is asking, can she pay me to be her carer?
Okay. If they live in the same house, it's very difficult to get the council to agree that she can use her direct payments to pay a family member who lives with her to care. There are exceptions. You'd have to show that it was the only way to provide care, that for example, there were very specific communication needs or specific religious needs or whatever it would be, that someone coming from outside the family would not be able to provide the care because for whatever reason it wouldn't work. So you'd have to argue quite clearly about that. If the carer doesn't live in the same household, it's not so strict, and you have to show that that you're an appropriate person to provide the care, but it's not as strict. But either way, you need to be talking with the local authority, the council who did the assessment of her needs, so that you're working with them to work out how best to do it. If someone is employing somebody else through their direct payments to care, so they're paying for care through their direct payments, that person becomes an employer, and it does come with quite a lot of responsibilities for paying the national insurance and the tax and being insured, employers' liability insurance, and covering holidays and sick leave and things like that. And that is quite complicated. There are organisations out there to help you manage your direct payments, as I've said before, or an individual can be the person to help manage the direct payments, but I think it's extremely unlikely that a council would agree for the same individual to be the one helping manage the direct payments and also getting paid to care. So you need to look at all that and talk with the council and see what can be done around that.
So quite a lot to think about, but there are options there.
Yeah.
Right, okay. Next question I think is quite a generally very useful one is, do you have a checklist of things that should be considered after diagnosis?
Sorry, Helen, just one other thing, going back to the direct payments, you could use them to pay an agency to avoid being an employer. But of course, if the carer wants to be employed, then they would have to be employed by the agency and then pay, be paid that way.
So it's quite a tricky situation. Yeah. I guess it's about weighing up what works for you in those situations that makes the most sense in your situation. That's really, really helpful. Thank you. Yes, so the question about whether we should have is there a checklist of things we should consider after diagnosis?
If you Google this, there are some different organisations have some. I've put together a brief one of my own. The first one, going back to our first question, actually, is think about powers of attorney, lasting powers of attorney. If you haven't got them in place already, really useful to have them in place. So think about those. Think about what relevant disability benefits the person with the diagnosis might qualify for. So if they are over pension age, it would be attendance allowance. If they're of working age, it would be personal independence payment. So have a look at those, see if the person qualifies. It's a good time to start looking at what local support is out there, what organisations, what carers support, and what dementia cafes, anything might be out there, so that you get a feel for local resources. You might want to think about your home, whether in the long term it's going to be suitable, whether things like handrails could be put in, or making things more recognisable, colour coding doors, things like that. It's a chance to start thinking about future proofing where you live, if you can. Certainly look at where you might get support as a carer. Perhaps ask for a carer's assessment. You can ask for one straight away. or see how things go, but it's never a one-off. You can always have your carers assessment reviewed if things change. You might want to be thinking about your preferences for future care and thinking about advanced care planning. And there are some documents. I know in Gloucestershire there's a very good advanced care planning document. It's called Planning for Your Future Care. You can Google it and you can download it. So those sort of things you might be thinking about. Driving, if the person's still driving, you will have to let your insurers know and the DVLA. And the DVLA might want to contact your doctor and get some reports if you want to carry on driving. It's not necessarily that you can't, but they have to check how things are going. And in addition, if you're feeling unsure about your driving but still want to carry on, you might want to ask for a SAGE driving assessment, SAGE. I think it stands for Safer Age. I can't remember what it stands for actually, but anyway, SAGE driving assessment might give you confidence if you're still intending to drive. And yeah.
So lots and lots to think about.
Things. Sorry, I rattled through that list, didn't I? Mm.
Yeah, no, but that is something that carers could look up, and there will be sort of suggestions for what they might need to think about.
Yeah.
Thank you. The last one from the people who've already been in touch with us, it's very sort of straightforward. What is council tax disregard, and how do you know if you can get it?
Right, council tax disregard is something that is quite valuable, and not everybody knows about it. And it's based on the presumption that council tax bills are sent out on the assumption that there are 2 adults in the property. So if there's only one adult in the property, you get your 25% reduction from your council tax bill, single occupancy reduction. Some adults are ignored for council tax purposes. So students, full-time students, are ignored for council tax purposes. So if there's 2 people in the property and one of them is a student, that property will still get its 25% reduction, because the only person who's seen is the one who isn't the student, if you see what I mean. The radar only looks at the person who's not a student. Someone with a severe mental impairment is also ignored for council tax purposes. So if someone has a dementia and is getting the relevant disability benefit, and doctor is prepared to confirm that they have a severe mental impairment, then they can be ignored for council tax purposes. Now, there's only any point in applying for that disregard if it would then reduce the number of people in the property who are seen to 1 or 0. So if there are 4 adults in the property and one of you has a severe mental impairment, there's no point in going through it, because there's still 3 adults who are seen, and therefore you won't get that reduction. So the severe mental impairment disregard is a useful reduction. And also there's a carer disregard. So if you have a live-in carer, a paid carer who has to live in, they are disregarded. They're not seen as an adult living in the property. If you have a family carer living in the property who's caring at least 35 hours a week, but who isn't your spouse or partner, then they too can be ignored. So an adult daughter living with an elderly father, the daughter could be ignored as a carer. And if the father has a severe mental impairment, the father could be ignored for his severe mental impairment. If there's nobody else in the house, then that would reduce the council tax bill to 50%. And if the father lived on his own with a severe mental impairment and he was ignored, it's actually reduced to 100%, because if there is nobody living in the property except someone who has a severe mental impairment, then the council tax reduces to 0. Otherwise, if there's nobody on the radar in the property, it would be 50%. It's complicated, but you go to your local, the council that you pay your council tax to, their website should have all of this on the website, and the way to apply, or give them a ring and ask them about it.
It seems like it's well worth just having a look at that, if it's not too time consuming for people to do, because it could give you quite a good reduction.
Absolutely, yeah.
Excellent, thank you. So just moving over to the chat now, we've got another question about power of attorney, which is, if your home is joint owned, do you need power of attorney? Excuse me. And I assume they're talking about if you're selling the home, or if there's some.
Yeah, well, if it's jointly owned, it depends how it's owned, whether it's you probably need it anyway. You would need a power of attorney anyway, but I'm just thinking, if it's jointly owned and someone is still living there who owns it, is a joint owner, then it doesn't necessarily come into the equation anyway, the home. So if there's somebody who still needs to live in the home because they're a spouse or a relative over 60 or a relative with a disability and other categories who were already living there before the person moved into care, then the home won't come into the calculation anyway. Right. And hopefully that won't push your threshold up too far, and you'll be getting much more of a contribution from the county council to the care fees. But if you're looking at what to do with a home jointly owned as tenants in common or joint tenants or any other major asset, you really do need qualified financial assessment, people who know about the way the care home fees or care fees in general work. There is an organisation who can find you your local qualified advisor for care fees. The organisation is called Paying for Care, and is paying for care all one word.org, and you can find your local advisor there. So
we'll pop that in the chat for anyone who would be interested in that. We'll put that in the chat too. Excellent, thank you. There's another one about POAs, and it's a situation I think that probably many carers find themselves in, that it's a carer's dad who does not believe he has dementia at all. So when they're talking about power of attorney, that's obviously quite a tricky situation. He gets upset where his money's going, and I'm not sure if he has capacity or not. If he does have capacity and refused a POA, can this person's mum get him into a home when needed anyway? Like what kind of other ways can you go without having a power of attorney if that isn't possible?
Yes, it's difficult. I mean, if someone is in denial of their condition, it is very difficult. There will come a point where somebody will do a mental capacity assessment. If the person's care needs are such that they are needing a large amount of care and possibly residential care, then I would hope that there's been care needs assessment from the local authority. They will also do the mental capacity assessment, and then they will work with you to find the appropriate care. And it's very difficult when someone is refusing to see how things can move on. We do actually have our live online learning for this sort of transitions, which it might be worth the person who asked the question having a look at. But there are ways of having taster sessions, maybe a week or so's respite in a care home to get somebody used to it, or visits, and working with the social workers and the care home to try and make that happen. But it doesn't, I mean, when somebody's resistant and they don't have mental capacity, in a way, it doesn't make too much of a difference in terms whether somebody has the health and welfare power of attorney or not, because you're still trying to manage it in the best way, in the least stressful way possible for the person. I don't mean it doesn't make any difference if you don't have a power of attorney, but because your voice will be important, but your voice should be important even if you don't have it, because everyone working in the best interests of the person should be consulting the family and friends and trying to work together.
I think, thank you. I think we've got time for one more quick question, if I can try and do this, if I can try and condense this one. But is it correct that carer's allowance gets deducted from universal credit? The question's coming from someone with MS who's caring for their mum who has vascular dementia.
Yes, it does, but then on top, you then get a carer premium put back on. So they take with one hand and give with another. So the carer's allowance will be taken off any means tested benefit, pound for pound, but then you'll get put back on the carer premium. I'm just going to see what it is now, because it's probably gone up. It's £38.85 goes back on. So you won't be as well off as if you could keep the carer's allowance, but you'll be £38.85 better off than if you hadn't applied at all. Does that make sense?
It does. Thank you. It's the benefit system situation is just, as you know, very complicated. So thank you. And thank you for the answers you've given today. It's been really interesting. And I hope it's been useful to those of you online today. There is, of course, more information and help and support on the Dementia Carers Count website, and we'll share the links with you. They'll be in the chat as well. It's particularly interesting for me to be here today, not least because I'm new to Dementia Carers Count, but also listening directly to your concerns. I actually also wanted to ask a little favour. We launched our survey on Wednesday, and if you haven't already had a chance to fill it out, it would be so much appreciated if you could. If you have, it'd be brilliant if you could share it with other family carers you know. It does take about 10 to 15 minutes, and we do understand how busy you are and how often you're often asked to do these surveys and everything, but it's so important for us. It helps us to find out more about what caring means to you, what's difficult, but also what you think needs to change. The results of our survey help us develop our services to you, so we always evolve those. We always want your feedback on those services, and the survey is another opportunity for you to tell us about the services you get from us. But also, we know that that is only part of what you need, and so what you tell us in this survey will also help inform the policy and campaigning work that I lead, and make sure that together we can call on the government to make the positive changes that you tell us you need. So it's about us making sure that we're really hearing from you and then representing that with you to the people in charge to make sure that change happens. There's a link in the comments box for the survey, but it's dementiacarers.org.uk/survey. So thank you to everyone who's joined today. We frequently run, and Jane's already mentioned, longer live online learning sessions, and these explore a range of carers' rights and benefits and the types of assessment and support available. In these sessions, we are online together, and there's a better opportunity to reflect on individual situations. So if you find an issue's been raised and you're thinking, oh, that would really help with my specific situation, please do look out for these sessions, because they could be very, very useful for you. Meanwhile, please do continue to ask questions in the chat. We'll be here to answer for the next 15 minutes. And like we say, if you would prefer an individual response, please do contact us at support@dementiacarers.org.uk. And please don't forget to visit the Virtual Carers Centre for more practical information and support. And like I say, our website offers a lot more of the support and information, and we're really, really welcome hearing from you about whether, of the things that you'd like to see us provide. So please do let us know. And thank you very much for coming along.